Good morning, everybody. I hope you can hear me. I hope you can see me. Let's find out. It takes a while because of delay, I assume. Yeah. Yes, I can hear myself. That's good enough for now. How are you guys doing on this wonderful Wednesday, the 15th of January? This will be a shorter one. I don't know how much sprinting we will get done because I have to leave at 9:30 at the latest to catch a bus to go to the dentist and learn whether there is something that can be done about my very piratey leer. We'll learn. I assume that obviously the teeth I knocked out can be replaced. Question is how long that will take and all of that stuff. So that's kind of what will determine how many pirate videos I will be able to make. I could not record one yesterday, which kind of sucks. But I, as I said, I did record one for Treasure Island. It's already up, but not published because I felt I could do better. And I started recording one yesterday, and then I was halfway through the video, and my neighbors started, well, not the neighbors, like people started like heavy construction work with like a power drill and everything out, and chainsaws and like the full 9 yards. And that made it very difficult to record because it got super fucking noisy. And that's, doesn't help. So that's kind of what happened yesterday. I did do that. So hopefully I will be able to do that again today, or try today, and hope the construction stuff is over. Thing is, I decided to do the pirate videos with like the pirate costume kind of thing, and I can't record them indoors because there's not enough room for the saber in under my bed, which is a bit where I'm struggling with right now. Otherwise, I could have recorded it, later and all of that. But so I have to record them outside, and then I'm dependent on noise and also daylight, which is the other part. Of course, I could record in the middle of the night. There's like no noise and no construction, anything, but also no actual light. And I don't think I can get this all figured out with a ring light. I mean, I do have one somewhere, so I could potentially get it figured out with a ring light. That would be really interesting, sitting out there at like 10 p.m. or something like that in the freezing cold. Certainly something to learn. Yes, I took a shower already. That's the thing, because I have to be at the dentist's at 10. So I figured I'll take a shower this morning. And it takes a while for hair to dry. And that's, because I don't have a hairdryer and I don't like hairdryers, is I guess the other part. Like I could obviously own a hairdryer, but I don't like hairdryers. And that's why I took a shower relatively early. So it's, moderately dry when I leave for the bus because, it's cold out there. That's all of those things may or may not have happened. I mean, I can always just put on the bandana, right? To really embrace the sea dog look. Don't worry, I'm not breaking out the rum before I go to the dentist. I think that might be counterproductive. See, the interesting thing about walking the plank, though, is that walking the plank was not something that pirates did for most of the time. So as far as we know, pirates did not make people walk the plank. Obviously, sometimes people were, pushed overboard, but like having the whole like ritual thing of having them, walk on like a plank out on the sea, and then we basically have forced to walk into the sea. That's not something that pirates did neither in the 17th nor in the 18th century. The only times where that may have happened a couple of times as a form of torture was with pirates from Haiti after the Haitian Revolution. That's the only time we have reports of this actually happening that are somewhat credible. Um, there's really a fun thing in is it in The Pirates by George MacDonald Fraser, where someone argues because it's a super meta kind of book, right? And someone that is arguing on the pirate ship what to do with a prisoner, and someone suggests like make him walk the plank, and then the other guy goes, no, that's a Victorian fiction. I refuse to do that, which is tells you what kind of book The Pirates by George MacDonald Fraser is. And I finished it yesterday. It's a lot of fun. It's unfortunately, I agree with those people that say it's maybe a bit too long. I mean, it's longer than on Stranger Tides, and that has a very tight plot, but it's longer than that, and it becomes somewhat sprawling. And the comparison to, say, a Monty Python sketch is apt. And if you imagine like a 500-page Monty Python sketch, you can see how that can sort of be too much. Yes, I mean, see, that's first of all, Britain. That's absolutely fucking awesome. You should ask him. Like, I would love to have him on for a conversation. I don't know how willing he is to talk to smaller YouTubers, but I mean, sure, why not? Just ask. And yes, Ori, it is very much like a modern comedy pirate film in a lot of ways. It was published in 1983, and George MacDonald Fraser was like a super fascinating guy, right? A fascinating writer in general. Like his Flashman historical novels are very fun. Also, haven't not necessarily. Um, I would I would have to reread them. I think they have aged pretty well if you are reader willing to understand what they are doing. If you're doing a surface level reading of these books, they are absolutely abhorrent, because the main character, Flashman, being a first person narrator, is an incredibly horrid person, right? He's a sexist, he's a racist, he's all these things. He's taken from the character Flashman in Tom Jones' School Days, like the Hardy novel from the 19th century, and which kind of tells you what Fraser's always doing. He's very much combining his knowledge of history and literature to make incredibly deep commentary on the one hand, but incredibly sort of like comedic stuff on the other hand, and that's kind of what the Pirates does as well. So you have the Flashman stuff, then you have some serious historical fiction and his autobiographical stuff about his time in the army during World War II. He was in the Burma campaign, so not necessarily the nicest place to be in World War II. And he was a screenwriter. He wrote screenplays for the 1970s Three Musketeers movie that I have forgotten which one that is. And he wrote the screenplay for the James Bond movie Octopussy. So when he's writing a fiction, like a book that is about pirate movie fiction, basically, fictional pirate movies and stuff like that, he has the sort of like insight from what it is to write Hollywood screenplays at the same time. So it does very much sort of parody pirate films in a way that, yeah, that a modern pirate comedy would potentially be able to do if they, wouldn't have to, also get like financing from from the sort of like Hollywood machine that it is lampooning. So it does all of that. It's just like incredibly funny and super meta. Like at one point, there's like the sort of like anti-hero has the hero at his mercy. It's like, we can just like kill you, and the hero's like, no, I'm the hero. You can't stab me on page 133. That's way too early. Oh yeah, Flashman is super fucking satirical. That's the point. Flashman is basically your nobility, lower aristocracy officer in the British Imperial Army in all these different places that the British Imperial Army was in the 19th century, and he's always getting by being a coward, by lying, by cheating, by all of that, and he's an incredibly despicable person, and that's kind of where the parody kind of comes in because it is at the same time, obviously, very clearly a criticism of how the British Empire operated in all of these places, and Flashman always is in these sort of pivotal battles and military operations in the British Empire, in India, in Afghanistan, in all of these places, and he usually takes credit for some supposedly heroic action of some British officers, British military doing something there. I don't think the Charter of the Light Brigade is in the Flashman books, but I could be mistaken. So he's always there, and he always takes credit after having done basically everything that is the opposite of British heroics and so forth. So it's really fun stuff to read, but because it is written in that sort of like 19th century sort of privileged upper class style, as more like his private sort of like diary entries or something like that. It is incredibly, it uses a lot of like racist and incredibly sexist language because Flashman's constantly fucking his officers, his superiors, wives, and everyone. Like he's an absolute pig, is the point, and he writes that way. So I can see that this is not a book that would get like a lot of audience today because of the language it uses. It uses that for like not as an expression of George MacDonald Fraser's political views. I'm pretty sure of that, but it does use that language, and that can make it hard to get into in a lot of ways. And there's some of that in the Pirates as well, right? It does use that kind of language because being pirate movies, they obviously also are always a commentary on imperialism and on white supremacy and all of these things. And there's a black pirate queen in there, and the way she is often described is incredibly racist. But once again, this is very much a depiction of those kind of pirate movies. So having that in there is justifiable in that regard, but it can still be it can be frustrating to read. On the one hand, it can be frustrating to read if you are a person of color and have to live with like real world racism and sexualization because of your race and all of that stuff every day, and that's very much understandable. But it's it just does have those elements, and it uses language that you definitely don't necessarily get away with using today. Like at one point, like another character uses the sea slur for her. Like, and by sea slur I mean the racist sea slur, not the other one, not the British punctuation thing. Yeah, well, Red Sonja was a character, a Robert E. Howard character as well. But yeah, interesting. What book are you reading that has a Red Sonja stripper in there? Anyway, yeah, George MacDonald Fraser did a lot of stuff in his like he died at age 82 or 83 or something like that. So certainly did his did write a lot of stuff. He also wrote Black Ajax, which is one that I think I still want to read. It's a historical novel about historical black boxer in 19th century England, and the way like racism and exploitation of black people happened in 19th century. So he's very much also writing serious fiction from time to time about these kind of topics, but I think he's just like very good at comedy or parody in that regard. And the Pirates has a lot of these situations that are just like incredibly fun because he clearly understands a lot of like the problems with a lot of like these sort of like adventure movies of the 60s and 70s and even 50s, and your Errol Flynn movies, and how they are racially insensitive in a lot of ways. Now, where have I heard that book mentioned recently? Roundhouse, that is, because I've just heard it mentioned somewhere, read it somewhere else, not from you. I'm Ori, so I'm just trying to figure out where that was. Like one of those like fun things, like once again in the Pirates is this moment where like the British pirates are attacking like the Spanish the Spanish garrison somewhere, and it's like the Spanish garrisons are surprised. No, the Spanish garrisons are unprepared. They always are. It's part of their training, and I'm like, you bastard. So yeah, highly recommend reading The Pirates by George MacDonald Fraser. Maybe splitting it in parts if the comedy becomes too much, because some of the comedy is also just like super over the top, because there is that sort of like surrealist Monty Python element to it, and I can understand why that is not necessarily for everyone in a lot of ways. Very good. Like if I remember where I read that mention, I'll let you know. Or if you remember, please let me know. Because that's the kind of thing that then bugs me forever when I'm like, oh, gods, where did I see that? So yeah, but I'm gonna hold off on further pirate readings until I'm back from the dentist and have like, I mean, I assume that I'll be back with no new like replacement tooth quite yet. I kept the one that fell out, but I don't think they can just glue it back in. That's not usually how that works. But I assume I'll know, have like a better timeline of how things look, and that's certainly what I'll do today. I'm going to finish up reading the Great Transformation by Carl Polanyi, which I started before the Power Broker came out, and then I got interrupted by the Power Broker and the whole pirate thing. And then I'm going to start Death of the Author by Nnedi Okorafor, which I am very excited about. I think it's going to be an interesting book in a lot of ways. Also, I need to start figuring out how to pronounce her name, because if I want to make a video about it, I want to make sure that I actually pronounce it correctly. And the double N at the beginning is one of those things that gives me problems, because it's not something that you have in German language or in English language. Yeah, yeah, they can do that. I mean, that's I guess what will happen. That's why I kept it, like because I'm sure they want to use that in part to sculpt the new one. I mean, it's interesting. There's probably some information decay there, because the one that fell out was already like the replacement for the original that I knocked out like years ago. So that one was sculpted after the original, and now they're going to sculpt this one after the sculpture of the original one. So I wonder how that tooth will look in like a couple of iterations, is what I'm saying. Well, if it was the Adam Roberts thing, then I probably did not come across it there, because I don't listen to his podcasts. Adam Roberts is still someone I need to read. Multiple people, including you, Ori, have told me I should read him. Yeah, I'm sure it'll happen this year at some point. Now, gold would be really cool, but I doubt I can afford that. Yeah, exactly, Britton. I mean, if he's already talking to fans in a Facebook group, I think he's very approachable. That's like the one thing that I'm always struggling with. Like, depending on what kind of author you're talking to, the way to approach them. Like, some people you can just like message on like social media, and they go like, sure. And then there are authors that go like, well, ideally, just ask their agent. They sometimes have like a promoter, whatever, a publicist, whatever you want to call it, and you need to go through them. But like if Mocock is interacting with you on Facebook, it feels like you can just like message him. I mean, otherwise he'll probably just like have switched off like private messages, right? Well, I mean, that also makes sense that if he's using his private profile, that he doesn't go under Michael Moorcock, because that, on the other hand, Stephen Erickson does. But that's like another thing that I want to do now. Now that like relatively soon, I want to go back and do that whole like Elric reread and make videos about those, because I wanted to do that like ever since the big like 3-volume thing came out, and then I couldn't because volume 2 and 3 were like region locked for me, and then. But now that I have them, I feel an Elric reread is in order. I guess the problem is, of course, that from what I can tell, the 3 volumes are not in publication order, but in chronological order. But I'm not quite sure. I need to double check that. And so, and I'm usually a fan of stuff being in publication, reading stuff in publication order and not in chronological order, because I think it allows, it allows for a better understanding of an author like growing with their craft. But with the Pfeffer and Grey Mouser thing, they did the same, right? Like the Swords Against Something series did have these small sort of like vignettes in between stories, and they are in basically in chronological order as well. But as far as I know, that was done by Fritz Lieber himself, so he selected the series in the publication order. So I'm somewhat okay with it, but I think you can still tell which books were written at what time, because they, Lieber's style does change over like 30 something years, 40 years of writing these stories. I mean, the other thing you can do, Britain, is like he's got an official website, right? Michael Moorcock has an official website, and if he has like like some authors just have like a contact the author kind of form, and some authors do have like a, if you want to contact me, here's the address for the person to contact. I was thinking about maybe asking Nalo Hopkinson about talking after I was reading Blackheart Man, and maybe I'll still do that if I read a couple of her other books. And I checked for her because, yeah, and she does have like on her website, she has like a email links, like if you want to book Nado for an appearance or anything else, just use this this email, and then you can do that. So that's usually what I would do if when it comes to contacting people. For example, with WTR last year, he's got like a contact my agent thing on his website, and that's what I used there. I know Jimmy Nuts just messaged Ted Williams on Twitter and asked him if he for the interview that Ted did with that Jimmy did with Ted Williams. But I think that's also like a sort of like a, how can I say, it's a question of like relative power or whatever, like and confidence, of course. So I would probably not just send a private message to Ted Williams on Twitter, maybe, if he's still on Twitter at this point in time. But before I talk to Ted Williams, I still need to finish his the Last King of Ostenard. This year's already packed with books from like last year that I forgot to read. And I still haven't looked at the books I want to read next. I still haven't made like a full list of 2025 books that I want to read that come out this year. Although I have the second part of Ronald Hutton's Oliver Cromwell biography on there, and I'm very much looking forward to that. So I'm wondering if I should mention those kind of books in if I make when I make the video on 2025 publications I want to read. If I should add the Oliver Cromwell biography in there as well, because still in my head I still kind of make this difference between like academic nonfiction on the one hand and fiction books on the other hand, and I feel like I should probably not do that, especially since I've started, making videos about some nonfiction books, like I did with both Palo Alto and what's the other one, Wild Faith by Talia Lavin last year. And if I talk about The Power Broker, which might be worth talking about. I have not read the Wolf Hall trilogy, but aren't they about Thomas Cromwell, like his? Um, I mean, obviously they're like a generation before that, or two generations before that. So I think they're like about Oliver Cromwell's ancestors in that regard, if Thomas Cromwell and Oliver Cromwell are even related. But I have not read those. No, it's one of those really interesting things that I obviously they're huge, right? And Hilary Mantel was obviously very famous, and those books have been read and have won awards and everything for a long time. Um, I remember back years and years ago. Someone suggested reading it in my offline book club, and was super excited about reading it. And I did not read it back then. I mean, we did vote on like a different book at the time, and we did not read it. And the fact that this specific person suggested reading the book kind of put me off trying it, because they're I don't even want to say taste in books, but their reasons for suggesting books were at the time very much suspect to me in the way they decided to read books, because it was usually, well, the cool people, the cool intellectual people writing in the intellectual journals, not journals, like newspapers that I read, have said this is a good book, so it will be a good book, and that's why I want to read it. And there was like a level of elitism in there that I always distrusted, and that's why I have never read The Wolf Hall. I should probably change that. Yes, you got the wrong Cromwell. So the Wolf Hall trilogy is about Thomas Cromwell, who was courtier at the court of Henry VIII. So he's very much key in the whole negotiations between Henry VIII and the Catholic Church and the Pope. And all of the stuff that leads to the break and the between Henry VIII and the Pope, and the founding of the of the Anglican Church, of the Church of England, and all of that. And he's not Oliver Cromwell. Oliver Cromwell is, I guess it's like 50 years later, roughly 50 years later. Like Henry VIII is like mid 16th century, and Oliver Cromwell is obviously first half of the 17th century in that regard. I think Thomas and Oliver are related. They might be grandfather, uncle, something like that. But that part I would have to double check. So yeah, one is one works for a king, the other one beheads a king, or like has him beheaded. So slight difference in approach to royalty. Speaking of beheading kings, there's a wonderful quote in Terry Pratchett where I keep forgetting which one it is. It's like royalty is like dandelions. No matter how many heads you chop off, there's always one more. Which, Terry Pratchett. Another one I came across recently, I was rereading Men at Arms, and there's this wonderful thing where, in just like in a footnote, Terry Pratchett just goes, well, the axiom, no one, honest men have nothing to fear from the police, is currently under review by the Axioms Appeal Board. And I'm like, you bastard. So yeah, Oliver Cromwell, Civil War, and Thomas Cromwell is what you might call you can't even call it Reformation, but like the Anglican schism, I guess, is what I would call it at this point. So different Cromwells. I mean, didn't like at least one, maybe two of those, or did all three win the Booker Prize? I keep forgetting, but yes. I think the only thing by Hilary Mantel that I ever read was her essay. Is it called Royal Bodies? I think it's called Royal Bodies, something like that. The one on the depiction of the British royals and stuff. I think that's the one I've read. But yeah. And Ronald Hutton, like he wrote, or obviously I guess wrote at this point is the correct word, because if it comes out next month, then it's written at this point. A two-part biography of Oliver Cromwell, the making of Oliver Cromwell, and the second one is Oliver Cromwell, Commander in Chief. And part two is coming out, well, in February. And in general, I do appreciate what like Ronald Hutton's style of writing, sort of popular academic texts. I would call them. Like he's a serious academic. He's God, what official professor for, like, I think English history. He does a lot of like lectures on the Gresham College lecture circle. He's circuit. His speciality is more like folklore and stuff like that. In a lot of ways, he wrote a lot on like witches and witchcraft, or the image of witchcraft and paganism in England in different eras. The first thing I read by him was A Triumph of the Moon, which is a history of well, of Wicca and neo-paganism, which is a really good. I guess it's still sort of like the standard text on the history of Wicca and modern like neo-paganism in a lot of ways, and it's a really good book in that regard. And it has like the witch history of modern terror or something like that, and so him tackling Oliver Cromwell is slightly outside of his wheelhouse, but only slightly, and yeah, sounds like something I might be interested in. And then, of course, there is a new history of the German Peasants' Wars coming out, and those are, fairly interesting in how they intersect with the Reformation, how they intersect with other parts of European politics in the early 17th century, and not 17th, 16th century. How Martin Luther is sometimes seen as sort of like helping the peasant uprisings, which is wrong, because Martin Luther was not exactly a fan of peasant uprisings, not exactly a fan of peasant freedom. He was very much in favor of keeping like the social hierarchy going. Which is why he got mad at his sometimes collaborator Thomas Müntzer, and got even madder at like the Anabaptists and people like that. All right. Shall we try for like one sprint? I think that sounds like a good idea, and I can at least go through my emails and stuff like that. And I would be back. Let's make it a shorter sprint, because I need to figure out when to get up here and when to leave and all of that. Let's do like half an hour of sprint, and I'll be back at like 5 past, maybe 10 past, something like that, the hour. And until then, I'll just try to get shit done. And yeah, let's do that. And I'll see you then. Hello. I made it back. How are you guys doing? Did you get stuff done? I did, in fact, get some stuff done. I did read some emails. I did message some people about stuff, and that's that's kind of what the plan was mostly. And yeah, seems I'll be going to a concert next Tuesday evening to interview a band. So I need to double check stuff for that. See if I can find someone who comes with me to take pictures, because I can't do that. That kind of stuff. So I guess I'm up to date on all of those things, and can now face the dentist and see how that one goes. And once I'm back from the dentist, I'll probably record a video on Treasure Island in the hopes that the place out there is not another jackhammer paradise, which, is bad for recording videos, at least outdoors. And yeah, how do you guys do? And hey, Nexi, how you doing over there in Texas? I assume you're still in Texas. It is black tea. It is a very cheap black tea. I bought like 1 kilo, like somewhere relatively cheap, because I drink so much of it that buying expensive, good tasting tea doesn't make sense for this. Hello again, Britain. What are you actually reading at the moment, Britain? Still Yiddish Policeman's Union, or have you moved to something else? Interestingly enough, Michael Chabon is one of the people that contributed introductions to those 3 volumes of the Michael Moorcock Elric collection. The other 2 being, of course, Alan Moore and Neil Gaiman. That was probably an unfortunate choice, especially when you look at what the Neil Gaiman introduction thing is compared to, with like all the stuff revealed about Neil Gaiman now. That introduction reads very creepy. Oh, okay. So you're still enjoying both of those, I assume, or have you grown tired of them? See, one of the other things that I find interesting, that I've learned now with the tooth missing, is like I think I understand why pirates are often rolling their R's more. Because if you roll your R, you have your tongue slightly higher up at at the beginning of your gums and not at the top of your teeth. And if you don't have teeth up there, that makes it easier to speak. Interesting discovery. Oh yeah, right. College started again for you, right? You're back. You're back at university. That does take away from reading time. I'm aware of that. At least if you actually want to, finish courses and stuff. Yeah. So I'm gonna finish the Great Transformation, which is a very interesting book. I do really appreciate what Polanyi did there. What's kind of fascinating is that I don't know when this edition that I have it was published. It has like an introduction, a foreword by Joseph Stiglitz, and it's all about like how the 90s have shown us that Polanyi was right, and that markets are in fact embedded in like a social system, and that neoliberalism doesn't actually work, and how maybe now we can actually move towards a more like socially conscious form capitalism or markets in general, and it hasn't aged too well, has it? Which is obviously a shame because, yeah, Polanyi was definitely right, and having no market regulation whatsoever is a bad idea. But then I did, like, what was that? I recently read a book somewhere, some book. I keep forgetting what it was. Or was it like a longer article? Someone was once again talking about how markets are in fact. Oh yeah, it was one of the essays about pirates, in an essay collection about pirate history. And well, there was an economics. One academic was like an economist, and he was talking about like how you can look at piracy through like an economic lens, and he was still trotting out the fucking irrational actor in the market, Homo economicus, and I'm like, this is from 2021. You should have realized that no, economic actors are not rational. They have never been. It's a fiction. But then economics seems to be more like a religion than anything else at this point. It's just like, fascinating to see how that sort of like stupid idea that of the rational actor in a market has such staying power. Which is just like, frustrating because you're like, well, we could have like, stepped away from that and still do like some form of like market. You don't have to go to like full like planned economies and 5-year plans and shit like that. That's not necessary. If you just accept that people are not necessarily acting rationally when they do, economy, they do economy things, and that's, but we can't have that. Also, I think I need to apply for. I should probably check on that. I should have gotten my voter registration thing, not registration, but the thing I need to fill out if I want to apply for like mail-in ballot for the German elections, which are next month, and I should probably do that because it's like going voting on like a Sunday is always this stupid thing where I'm like, oh gods, am I not? And obviously I should go, and I usually vote. I think I've missed one of the EU elections a couple of years ago, but usually I go vote, obviously. So doing that like as a mail-in thing before the actual elections is just like easier to do. So I should have a look at that, I think. All right. But with all of that said, I should probably get ready to go to the dentist. Maybe, pack my stuff if I want to go straight from the dentist to the gym or not. Do a final brushing of teeth because I've been drinking tea, and I feel like, it's just polite to go there without all of that. And yeah, I'll see you guys later. I mean, you'll see me later in like a video, hopefully, and I guess I'll see some of you on some Discord. And tomorrow there will be like the full sprints again with everything that implies. Although no sprints on Friday because I have another doctor's appointment on Friday. It's a bit of a fractured week this time. So have a great Wednesday. Good night, Britain. Everyone else, try to be, try to get stuff done and not have too hard a time of it. The world is fucked up enough. We don't need to make it harder for ourselves, I think.